How are y'all doing today? I hope everybody at Gourdvine up in Rixieville is doing good today. It's a beautiful day out here on the deck, out in the sun, and I just want to be out here because it's just so pretty. But with that said, I had to tuck back in this little corner because the sun is just blasting me here. And when you look at white paper and you're trying to read something white and the sun's reflecting off of it, it just kind of blinds you. Um, so anyway, I hope you guys are doing good. Hope you've had a good week. I hope your week, if you've been at home, has been productive and not stressful. You're not getting stir crazy. Um, if you've been at work, I hope you're being safe and I hope you are healthy and doing well. Um, I got something that I think I mentioned it on the video I did on Friday, and I got something here that I think will be a blessing to you guys. It's something that I've just been kind of thinking about over the last few months and really just felt like putting it together today. It's not a lot. It's not real in depth, and it's not real long, but I think it's very relevant to the time that we're in. I think for most of us, maybe not all of us, but most of us, this is, if not the biggest, one of the biggest things that we've been through in regards to the potential that we have to um, do something for Christ. And what I mean by that is the world's watching us right now. If you've been a Christian, if you've claimed to be a Christian, social media, whatever, they're looking at you and they're looking for hope. And there's a lot of people doing it. So as a friend of mine and I were talking, and the iron is hot right now. And you know what the saying is, you need to strike when the iron is hot. So Jesus said it this way. He said that the fields are ripe and they're white and they're ready for a laborer. So what I want you to do is be mindful that you are called to be laborers of Christ. And that said, one of the ways that you do it is, you got to shine bright. We know that. The message I've got today is from Matthew 5, and it's Matthew 5:12 through 16. And the title of the message is, Are You Salty? And that's a question for you. And as we go through this, I want you to compare yourself to what we're talking about and just see, are you salty? Is your salt level where it should be? Matthew 5:12. Let's look there. Let me turn there. All right. The Bible says this. It says in Matthew chapter 5, verse number 12. It says, Rejoice and be exceeding glad, for great is your reward in heaven, for so persecuted they the prophets which were before you. Ye are the salt of the earth. But if the salt have lost its savor, wherewith shall it be salted? It is thenceforth good for nothing, but to be cast out and to be trodden under foot of men. Ye are the light of the world, and the city that is set on a hill cannot be hid. Neither do men light a candle, but put it under a bushel, but on a candlestick, and giveth light unto all that are in the house. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. And just thinking about this, the city is set on a hill. The candlestick is something people see outwardly and something they can look at. It's a manifestation, if you will, of your conversation. And when the Bible talks about your conversation, it's your walk. It's how you treat people, how you act, the joy that comes through you. And there's not a lot of difference between salt and light, but there is some that I think are distinct. Light refers to being seen. It's your joy expressed. It's your peace expressed. It's your love expressed. Light is an outward expression of an inner relationship with Jesus by which your love, joy, peace, long-suffering, over and out flows. It's your countenance. It's the joy in the storm that you have, and people can't understand why. Salt, like it, is effective in use. You see, salt is effective in use, in action. It's not something they see, and while your works and while your countenance may be action, salt is effective in use. You see, you salt your potatoes to give them flavor. When you are canning vegetables in this time of year, people are putting their gardens in, and in the fall, they're going to bring in their vegetables. They're going to start canning, midsummer to fall, and they're going to take a little salt and put it in the can, and it's a preservative. It's to preserve the contents. You salt the wound to draw out infection, to promote healing, and then you add salt to your dough to promote a rise, to promote growth. But we are the salt of the earth. Jesus called us that. And in Colossians 4, 1 through 6, we'll turn there real quick. We will be turning a little bit. In Colossians 4, verse 1 through 6, we talk about salt flavors. Salt flavors. Now, what does that mean? Flavor. It makes it palatable. It's not bland. It enhances the taste of what it's touching. So in Colossians 4, we're going to look at chapters 1 through 6, or verses 1 through 6, rather. Masters, give unto your servants that which is just and equal, knowing that ye also have a master in heaven. Continue in prayer and watch the same thing with thanksgiving. You notice a theme is always thanksgiving. It was in Matthew 5:21, rejoice. Now it's thanksgiving. With all praying also. With all praying. There goes Paul again, saying the same thing he said in Philippians 4. With all praying for us, that God would open unto us a door of utterance to speak the mystery of Christ. So he's praying for an opportunity to speak Christ, for which I am also in bonds, that I may make him manifest as I ought to speak. That he may make him manifest as he ought to speak. Walk in wisdoms toward them that are without, redeeming the time. Let your speech be always with grace. Always. So when you're salting your words, they need to have grace. And that's going to come from the spirit of grace. That, like, if you're thinking of someone ill and you're manifesting all these bad things about this person, whether they may be true, maybe they're true. Maybe this person is what you're saying they are. Maybe they have done this to you or acted a certain way. And it doesn't have to be unbelievers. It can be Christians alike. I mean, maybe there's people in the church that have wronged you a certain way or said something you didn't like or what have you. And you go to approach them and you're talking about it and you want to address them with something, and you want to tell them the truth. If you're coming from that spirit of anger and frustration, it's not going to come off right. But if you season it with grace, if you season with salt, when you speak to them with grace, it's going to be a completely different conversation. And that's what he's saying here. He says, let your speech be always with grace, seasoned with salt, that ye may know how ye ought to answer every man. And that's just not the Christian. That could be a confrontation that Christians have, or a disagreement they have in beliefs or whatever. But it's also with the people that are looking at you that are not Christians, that are looking to you for guidance, for hope in this rough time. And they see you and maybe they don't live the way you live. Maybe their views don't line up the way your views do. And you might get on a political rant. You want to bust their chops on this side of the table because, hey, they don't line up with you on things that you believe in. But if you take a step back and you season with grace and you season with salt, your answer is going to come. Your answer is going to come across with a lot more love and a lot more, for lack of a better word at the moment, a lot more grace. So let your speech be always with grace, seasoned with salt, that ye may know how ye ought to answer every man. Season your words with salt. Salt flavors and is palatable. Salt preserves. Salt preserves. Flip over with me to James chapter 5. Salt doesn't pacify. In the old days, and even now, like we were talking about the canning, you put that salt in it because it acts as a preservative. It keeps the salinity level to which bacteria won't grow and things won't grow, so it extends the life of it. And this is not, look down at 5:19. It says this. It says, brethren, if any of you do err from what? From the truth, and one convert him, let him know that he that which converteth the sinner from the error of his way shall save the soul from sin, from death, and shall hide a multitude of sins. You know, in 16 it says this. It says, "Confess your faults one to another and pray for one another that you may be healed. The effectual, fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much." In 15 it says, "And the prayer of faith shall save the sick, and the Lord shall raise him up. If he that committeth sins, they shall be forgiven." You see, salt acts as a preservative. And we're talking about the action of salt. Salt acts as a preservative. It keeps things from going bad. It extends the shelf life. You know, the Virginia ham, the salty ham that we have, that salt is put in there and it permeates into the meat and it permeates into the tissues and those cells suck it up. But you know what? In that salt, the bacteria can't grow, so it is preserved and it is kept for a longer time. That doesn't mean that it'll never go bad. That doesn't mean you should always eat every can that's on the shelf past its expiration date. There will be a time when those things are no good and they don't last. Perhaps the seal gets bad, perhaps whatever, and something, air and oxygen and moisture can get in there, and they can get into that can, and bacteria can have a place to grow. But uh, salt preserves, and I say that it does not going to last forever because at some point, you know, God's timetable is going to click off, and He's going to return, and He's going to call His people out of here, and then He's going to return and set up a kingdom on earth. But salt preserves. You know, Jesus said, "Occupy till I come." He was talking about dropping off some uh, some servants. We talked about it last Sunday, and he said, "Occupy till I come." And that's what we're to do. We're to preserve and to be um, effect, have an effect on what's around us. We are to preserve it, and it's not preserving it. It says in 19, it says, "Brethren, if any of you do err from the truth, and one converteth him." So there is a preservative using the salt savoring or the salt flavoring method. You are to approach people that are not living the way that not living the way the Bible would have them live, and you're to talk to them, and you're to try to convince them, and you're to try to persuade them. And he says, "And brethren, if you do err, any of you do err from the truth, and one convert him, let him know that he which converteth as the sinner from the error of his way shall save a soul from death." So you are to be a preservative. You are to affect the world around you. We are, myself included. But also, one thing salt does is salt heals. When it's applied to an open wound, it promotes healing. It draws in the right fluid and draws out the infection. In James 3:14 through 16, we see this as an application, a spiritual application, if you will, of how we can be healing amongst us and how we can live like salty individuals. "For where envy and strife, there is a work of confusion to every evil." So it's 14. I'm starting at 16. My apologies there. In James 3:14, it says this, "But if you have bitter envy in your heart's glory, the wisdom..." No, 2:14. I've got the wrong reference. It's 2:14. "What doth it profit, my brethren, though a man say he hath faith and hath not works? Can faith save him? If a brother or sister be naked and destitute of daily food, and one of you say to them, Depart in peace, be ye warmed and filled, notwithstanding ye give them not those things which are needful to the body, what doth it profit? Even so, if faith, if it hath not works, is dead. Even so, faith, if it hath not works, is dead, being alone." And, you know, this is not saying that you're not saved by faith. Ephesians 2, Paul talks about that you are saved by faith. It's by grace you're saved through faith as a gift of God, not of works, lest any man should boast. This is not talking work salvation. What this is saying is faith is an action. If you are saying, "Hey, I have faith in the chair that I'm sitting in," if I were to say, "Hey, yeah, I believe that chair, I have faith in that chair, that chair can hold me up," but I don't sit down on the chair, then I've not exhibited faith. There's not an action of faith. And what this is saying is you are to care for people. You are to take care of people that are around you. You are not just to say, "Hey, look, oh, you don't have a coat, you don't have food, you don't have this. Okay, well, I'll pray for you." No, 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 no. You're to give them something. You're to help people. You're to be that healer, if you will. You're to help them with their needs and help them with their physical needs that people have, because they have them all around you. And what a great testimony! What a great witness! I'm seeing it a lot. There's one church in particular that I think they're out of Tennessee, but the people around them, or the medical offices and healthcare facilities around them, and even EMS and police stations, they were running low on surgical masks during this time. So these people put together a production and a assembly line, if you will, and they started making these um, masks, and they even had a way to sterilize it and seal it and whatever. But they acted in faith. They acted on something that there was a need of, and you know what? They're being a testimony. Their testimony, and they're being a light. They're being the salt of the earth. They're being Christians. They're not just watching the world burn and say, "I'll pray for you," and do nothing. They're taking action to help people. And what a blessing that is. And I think we can all do the same. Maybe not to that degree. Maybe, we can't meet together. Maybe there's whatever reasons why that's not going to be able to work for us. But what can we do for those who have need? What can we do? Could we write a card and send somebody a gift card for groceries or whatever? There's things that we can do. Maybe we don't have money to do that, but maybe there's something that we have that we can help somebody with, or even effort or work or however. But I think there's something that we can do to show the world that we are Christians. Salt heals. Salt helps things to grow and to rise, specific to a lump of bread or a lump of dough. And we're not talking. We know the Bible talks about that sin. Paul talks about in 1 Corinthians that sin, a little bit of leaven, a little bit of leaven, and leaven makes bread rise, but a little bit leavens the whole lump. He's not saying that leaven is bad or sinful. What he's saying is, if you get a little sin in, just a little bit contaminates the rest. And if you get a little leaven in bread, and he's using the example that a little bit of leaven in bread is gonna rise and make the whole lump rise. But we can look at that from a different context. Let's look at it not from the sinful context, but from a holiness context. If we look at it from what we should do, and we're promoting people, and we're doing the right things, salt will help bind, and salt helps people come together and helps build. Ephesians 4:16 is a good take on this, where I'm going with this. Ephesians 4:16, turn there with me if you will. The thought is that salt has a promotional aspect, a growth aspect, and using the method that we saw where you savor your words. But then we come down to Ephesians 4:16, and it says, but speaking truth in love, 4:15 rather, but speaking truth in love may grow up into him in all things, which is the head, even Christ. So if there's a growth, you're growing up. You speak truth in love, but speaking truth in love may grow up into all things, which is the head, even Christ. Hebrews 3:13 says this. It says, take heed, brethren, lest there be any of you an evil heart of unbelief in departing from the living God, but exhort one another daily, while it is called today, lest any of you be hardened through deceitfulness of sin. For we are made partakers of Christ, if we hold the beginning of our confidence steadfast unto the end. And it cut me off. Oh, and so 3:13, look at 13. It says this. It says, but exhort one another daily. I read over that so fast I missed a point, and this was in my notes. But exhort one another. It talks about how there's growth from speaking truth in love, but speaking the truth in love may grow up into him in all things. So there's a speaking to promote to growth. There's a exhorting to grow, exhorting daily. Exhortation is you're encouraging, you're strengthening, and we know in Hebrews 10:25, we'll turn over there real quick. But Hebrews 10:25 says this. It says, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together as the manner of some is, but exhorting one another. But exhorting one another. There it is again. And so much the more as ye see the day approaching. Now, I know we're on a quarantine. We're not supposed to get together. It's harder for us to assemble. But what is the context of this assembly? It says in 24, and let us to consider one another to provoke unto love and to good works. So the context is to provoke unto love and good works. Now, while you're not able to meet, and while your church is shut down, and while the government's asked you not to meet together more than groups of 10, even threaten to imprison folks who do, how can you be together and exhort? How can you talk to people and be a light and be a witness and be a somebody that in love you can encourage and exhort these folks that are around you, whether it be those who are unbelievers who are looking for hope, or maybe it's believers who are just downtrodden and they're upset and they're stir crazy and they feel all alone during this and they feel scared during this even. How can you exhort those folks? Well, in 10, in Hebrews 10:4, it talks about doing it in the spirit of love, doing it for the right reasons. Let me not paraphrase. Let me read it again. It says, and let us consider one another to provoke unto love and to good works. Verse 23 says, let us hold fast the profession of our faith without wavering, for he is faithful that promised. And let us consider one another to provoke unto love and to good works, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together as the manner of some is, but exhorting one another, and so much more as you see the day approaching. To exhort one another as the day gets darker, I believe, is being salt. I believe it's living a salt-filled life. The question I have in closing is this: are you salty? We looked at a few different things of salt, and I know I bounced around in some scripture. But just to recap, salt preserves, salt heals, salt promotes, and salt flavors. Are you salty? Do you promote healing? Do you promote preservation? Are you trying to walk holy, but not just walk holy, influence others to walk holy? To preserve and to stay away from sin and stay away from sinful things? Do you speak truth in love? Are you careful to promote and to try to influence growth, adding your own sweat, your own salt to the work of God? The question we need to ask is, are we promoting these things? Are our words palatable? Do they help the church rise, not in pride or in sin, but in spiritual things and godly things? Are we living in community, affecting unbelievers? Not to speak great swelling words, but to win the debate, or to even have a great defense of our positions. But do we see the lost in our, but do the lost rather, not to speak great swelling words and to win debates, but do the lost see our heart? Do they see what we're doing? Can they tell by our actions that we care about them, that we love them? And by that, they know we're different. You see, light is seen. Light is seen. But salt, when you pack it in the wound, or you put it on your food, is felt, or it's tasted. Whereas the eyes can see the light, and they can see the countenance of joy. They can see the countenance of peace and love. It needs to be coupled with that salt that is felt and tasted. The physical aspects that people need to be taken care of. There's words that they need to hear that need to be savored or flavored with salt. So the question and the challenge, I guess, for tonight is just, are you salty? Would you line yourself up with saying, yes, the words that I speak are in love. The actions that I take affect others, and I'm influencing people to be godly and to be holy around me. I'm promoting the body of Christ to uh, to do the work of Christ, and I'm putting my own self effort into it, not promoting myself, but promoting the organization. And the organization is the work of Christ, not necessarily one specific church. It's not only Gordvine Baptist Church. It's the universal body of Christ. Are we promoting His work? And lastly, are we healing those who need things? Are we thinking of the fact that some people may be going without food right now during this crisis? Their jobs are lost. What can we do? We might not be able to do everything for some, but we can do one thing for someone. And I think that's just where we take it. I think it's a great opportunity to be a salt and light in this world. And I think right now the iron is hot. People are really seeking and really searching. So it's up to us. We don't want to miss the opportunity and the blessing that God has for us to shine and to be Christians. So that's all I have for tonight. I love you guys. Praying for you. Be safe. Wash your hands. And so on.